Hey, what's up? Nathan here from PHStudios. This is podcast number 4. This is Halloween, October 31st, so I hope you're having a nice Halloween if you're doing something special for today. If you're not doing something special, I hope you have a nice day anyway. Alright, so first I'd like to talk about the content of the website, where I've been the past few weeks and what's going on. The past few weeks I've been pretty much sick the entire time. I didn't want to create any videos that I would cough and I would sound horrible and you wouldn't understand a word I'm saying and things like that, so I did not make any videos. Last weekend, Friday, I was getting ready to get some work done on the screen system, the next screen system that's going to be ready for the tower defense. And I took a little break from that, and my friend came over, so we were going to play some games, so let me tell you what happened. So I started playing a few games, and about the third round in, my power supply just popped. My friend saw a flash of light from it, and it just smelled like it was just burning very bad. You could smell it pretty much throughout the entire 2 floors of the house, so it was pretty bad. So that's why I was not here last weekend and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. On Wednesday I got a new computer and I set that up, and Thursday, Friday I got another new computer on Friday and I set everything up. Now I have 2 computers up here running pretty well and everything should be good to go for content, and hopefully if I don't get sick again, I'll release content like usual, which is every weekend. Around 1 or 2, maybe 3 tutorials, stuff like that. Alright, so I have 2 computers. One of it's a MacBook, or Mac Pro, one of the towers. The other one is the Dell replacement that I got for the one that fried. So if one of them goes down, I'll have a backup. And if 2 of them goes down, well, I won't have any backups that way. Alright, so now I want to talk a little bit about, there's been a lot of questions about C# stuff, and I picked 2 topics up for this podcast because I want to keep it a little bit short, and I want to get a little bit audio so I can make an audio version, so I probably won't demonstrate anything too complicated in this video. So, the first thing I want to talk about is the access levels of C#. You know where you have a method, you set it up as public, method A, opening, closing parentheses. Well, what does this public mean? And I'm going to talk about all the various access levels right here. Public is pretty much, you can get to it anywhere. If you have a public field or public property or public method inside a class, you can get to that outside the class. As long as you can get an object of that class, you can get to those public fields, public properties, and public methods. So they are pretty much, like it says, public. You can access it outside of the class. Private, on the other hand, you can only access it inside the class. In most cases, you will see a private method to go along with a public method. So that way, the only way to get to that private method is when that public method calls it. So it has to be inside the class. So you have to be inside the constructor or inside the methods, inside the public method in order to call the private method. So things like initialize. You want to call that from the constructor. If you want to set up to where initialize, you cannot call initialize yourself. You set up to where the constructor calls it. You make that a private void initialize. So that way, the only way it can be called is from the constructor. It's inside the class level, so you can access the private method, but once you get outside of it, you cannot call it directly. Static. Static is scoped throughout the entire class. So you see my if you see my paddles tutorial or my spatial tutorial, I have about 4 or 5 static fields and maybe 2 or 3 static methods and things like that. On the panels, it's pretty much the entire thing static. There are a few things that aren't, but it's mostly static. So what that means is I can access it from the class level. I do not have to get an object of the class. Let's say we have a class named square. Every square is going to have 4 sides, so we can make that a static field. So 4 is an integer, so let's make a static int 4. Static int sides is equal to 4. So in order to get that, we do the square, the class, dot sides. We do not say square s is equal to new square, opening closing parentheses, then s dot sides. We just say square, the class, dot sides. So we get to it by calling the class levels dot whatever we want. Think of it as an object. You call object dot draw, object dot update, but we're calling the class instead of the object. So square the class dot sides. That's the static field. Alright, abstract. This one's a little bit pretty cool in my opinion. You have a class that you know is going to govern a various amount of other classes. Take my space shooter tutorial for example. I have a class called gameplay object. Now I know that class is going to cover all the gameplay objects that will ever exist in my game. I can make more different types of gameplay objects. I can make less. I can delete some. But the main point is that the gameplay object class itself will be sort of the very largest parent of all the gameplay object classes. So it will be the root class for everything. Now, the way you want to do and think about abstract is, like I was doing just a minute ago, is what can I make that will govern all available sort of objects or menus or items or things like that. Like the game screen. That will govern all game screens provided, like a menu system, pause screen, play screen, load screen. Those will all be part of the game screen system. So that's what the abstract is. You can think of a class that will govern all sorts of various types. You can go deeper. You can say all these classes will have a position. Gameplay object, going back to the gameplay object. All gameplay objects will have a position. All gameplay objects will have a texture. All gameplay objects can be updated. All gameplay objects can be drawn, and all that stuff. Now, that's the abstract class level. Let's talk about the method and fields. For an abstract method, those, the curly braces you put in the methods, you do not put those in an abstract method. You do everything else the same except for a semicolon at the end. So an abstract method is a method you define in the abstract class, and it has to be implemented in all child classes, in all derivative classes. So I know I have a gameplay object. I know every object in my game is going to update a different way, but I also know that every object in my game will have to update. So then I can make an abstract class, because you will have to override that update, abstract update, so you will have to provide some code. So that's where you come to the decision if every object, no matter what the object is, it will be updated in some way. Then I can make an abstract update. And every object will be updated in some way and a different way. No two objects will be updated the same way. No two object types. Of course, 1,000 bullets will be updated the same way, but a bullet will not be updated the same way as a ship, sort of thing. Same way with the abstract properties. The properties are basically a short method for getters and setters. So the abstract way to do that is I know we can get and set the field, but each class is going to be doing that differently. Virtual is a little bit like abstract, except for in the parent class, it doesn't have to be an abstract class, but in the parent class, you can write some text or write some code in there to perform the operation. So an abstract, you have to have, it has to be a semicolon. A virtual, you can do opening and closing curly braces and do some updating or some logic up there. So let's take the example if we have a position and velocity. Every gameplay object will have a position and velocity. No matter what the object is, we will always update the position based on the velocity. So in that case, we want the update method to be virtual. Because in the virtual, we get to the parent class, it's the parent of all other classes. We get up there, then we update our position. So every class will call that virtual update. It will go up and up and up and up until it goes to the gameplay class, and then it will update the position. So every object can be updated on position by providing a virtual update method. Internal. Internal is like private, but it's only internal to this assembly. Where private, you cannot get to it outside the class. Internal, you can only get to it to this assembly. So those are the access levels. I'll provide a more detailed explanation in a little bit about those. C# properties, I'll explain those. It's a pretty good decision to make all your fields private. Every one of your fields private. So nothing can get to it. Then you want to set up properties to get and set those fields. A property, you can get data from a field of your choice and set a value to the field of your choice. You can also perform logic. You will see this in the tower defense tutorial. I'll go way in depth on that because there will be some complex properties. You can even call methods in the properties, which I'll explain in the tutorial. So let's say we have an int x is equal to 5, semicolon. It's a private. Oh, one thing before I continue that. If you do not say an access level, the default is private. So if I say public int x is equal to 5, it's public. But if I just say int x is equal to 5, it's private, because the default is private. So int x is equal to 5, semicolon. So x is equal to 5. Then we have a property, public int capital X, or X property. The property has to be different from the field. And if you do use case sensitivity, you have to replicate the case. I'll explain that in a few seconds. So let's assume that I'm going to use lowercase x for the field and capital X for the property. That's the only difference between the field and the property. Now I can decide if I want the public access, if I want the public to be able to get the data and set it, or if I just want them to get the data, or if I just want to set that, or if we want to go even further, if I want to get the data, or if I want to private set the data to the property. Or if I want to do, you can do access levels in the property is what I'm saying here. Or if I just want to private get and public set, all that stuff. So right now I'm just going to go with the basic get set. So get, and then you have an opening closing curly bracket. Then you return X, return the field name. Now here's where I mentioned about case sensitivity. If you return the capital X, you're returning the property. It calls a property. It's wanting to get the data. Alright? So we go back up to the property. We do get. Return capital X. Oh, we go back to the property. Get, return X. Oh, we go back up to the property. Return, get X. Oh, we go back up to the property. It's an infinite loop is what we're doing. So you want to be sure that you're calling the